Thank you very much, Velase, with an awesome outline on the concept of leadership. I'm sure it's a battle of many who are in positions of leadership to facilitate leading their organizations, moreover, but also to allow themselves to learn. Just to pick up on some few comments you've made, which I found them quite interesting. You spoke about values versus principles. You spoke about change versus transition. And right at the end, you spoke about inside forces versus outside forces as some of the elements that facilitate change, be it in organizations or in oneself. In a context of inside versus outside, what would be your take on the element of, is it one more important than the other, or is it a question of balance to have the internal forces that should facilitate transition and outside forces that should enable change?
As human beings, we are impacted by both. We live in this context of external and internal. But why I'm saying or separating these two, it's because I want us to understand that if you grow through an external force only, then greed will come in, power will come in, being positional will take over, corruption will take over. But when you have the external growth balanced by internal growth, which is your personal definition of what legacy you want to leave, you are likely to balance what I call authentic leadership or Ubuntu leadership or exceptional leadership. Leaders who are struggling, Mkazi, to be balanced and positional become very competitive. They even compete with their own sons and daughters in their own homes.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm not Sitlem Kun, but I guess the phone I'm using belongs to Sitlem Kun. For people, I'm not a doctor yet. I'm still going to be a doctor one day. Yeah, my name is Zabalaza. I am in the radio communications industry. I work closely in sales and in communicating messages. And right now, Vela, our biggest messages that we are putting on many radio stations, especially community, is around this COVID-19. Thank you so much again, Mr. Telani, for speaking to us with such profound information. My question, firstly, maybe it's two questions. One, are we going to be shared this presentation? And then number two, will we be, what does it mean now when you talk about the inside and the outside? Because right now we're seeing a lot of aid that is happening in a lot of countries, especially us coming from outside. A lot of people are very skeptical about the aid that is coming from places like China, places like America, places like the UK, Italy, assisting Africa in this situation or in this current situation. Does that mean this is a way that these leaders are going to at some point take over or come and want a repayment of them coming to assist us in our trying times? Because as we know, we are a developing country and they have been developed for a while. And therefore we are the ones that are at the most deepest in terms of, I'm sure this is what the president is going to address tonight, is about how much poverty is stricken in our countries in terms of assisting people with food and basic necessities. So I'm talking about that whole idea of people leading from outside and other people emerging from inside. How do we participate in such a bigger, and when there are powers that be that are in charge? I hope my question is clear.
Okay. Thank you, Zabalaza. I'll take that one question. Let's take another question so that Velasa can respond on to at least 3 questions at once. I saw there was also a hand. Seneme.
Hello, my name is Seneme Mthembu, and I am asking this question from a perspective of management consulting. So I consult for financial services industries with a specialization of data and analytics. And often what I've found is that organizations are ready for external change. So that kind of looked at or prepared for. And you spoke very strongly of capability for the future and customizing our solutions for Africa. So with that in mind, and that's been brought up already about the tension between transition and change, where transition is internal and change is external. My question is, what kind of stimuli can be created, or interventions can be made for internal change, so for the transition of the individual within an organization?
I will be very hard on my response. And I'm going to make a simple example. If you run a home and you are a father or a mother, and all you have, your house, your furniture, the food you eat, everything you consume is from a donor outside of your home who has just pitched up and said, I want to give you sustenance for your life. Will that ever satisfy your being? Will it ever make you mature as a human being? The answer is no. So Africa, in my view at the moment, until Africans, not just leaders, us included, we wake up and understand that aid, support from outside, always comes with its intention. And I'm saying this because I've worked in an aid environment. I've been part of the Council of Churches in the early 90s. I've been part of the National Development Agency when it was started. I understand the politics of aid. And I want to say to Africa, including myself, we haven't been truthful to ourselves to want to depend on aid perpetually. Aid must come when it's needed, and we must grow out of it. Why is today Singapore better, while not very long it was struggling? Why is UAE today better, when before 1970 UAE was a desert and they had nothing? And today they're the darling of the world. Why is Mauritius with nothing at all that we have, minerals or whatever, but they are the best economy in Africa today, performing well? Why is South Korea, why is Rwanda being pumped as models of the future? We must grow out, Zabalaza, out of aid, and being truthful as leaders that we can lead our countries out of aid by being honest and by investing in the economic activities that are required, and by upskilling our people to be competent, skilled, and by creating an environment that make business thrive. I hope the president tonight will talk about that. But aid is a shame. We need it now, but not for the future. Let me come to Seneme about management consulting, a focus to external change, and about the future. How do we create it? I want to use an example of Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs, but I also want to use the example of the current founder of Virgin Active. I don't want to use local companies because we will disagree. That's why I'm choosing companies that are different. Virgin Active, the leader, has been able to create a totally different culture of workplace, of allowing people to become true to who they are, to come to work as they wish to be, to work where they want to work, and to only account for the promise they have made. That's the future. And that's where we need to do, even in management consulting, to allow employees to express who they are and to buy into the vision of the organization and to still meet the bottom line, for sure. But they must also be rewarded, Seneme, for making the bottom line. It should not only go to the top executives, they must also be part of sharing the profit of the company. And it must be declared openly, and it must be, you are a mathematician and you work in models, and you can come up with a model of how best to pay your employees at all levels so that they have a commitment to the organization. I hope I'm helpful. There were times when you were cut, but I think that's what you were asking. We can make it. It can be done. We just need to be truthful.
Yes, Babdelani, thank you.
I think, Babdelani, also the biggest question that everyone, after listening to any talk or any conversation or any presentation, is always in terms of what does one do now in their immediate space before, because if that's why I'm probably going to keep returning to this from the inside outside. It means there's going to be life if an egg breaks from the inside outside. So what do we do now immediately as a start, especially because Ubuntu has always been, I think, a campaign for years for many governments. Our government has been singing Ubuntu since Nelson Mandela became president, you know, and we are growing in a culture of people, our children are going to school with different races and whatever. Their vision or their idea of sharing at a simple, minute, sharing a game, giving me this, sharing this, is quite a problematic and a very difficult thing to say we can attain or will achieve. But how do we start now from where we are to create these internal to the external in terms of growth in leadership, but also planting this idea of Ubuntu leadership when we are also divided by economic lines of who has more money, who has access to this, and who has access to that?
Again, let me be a little bit radical to my response. If I had a magic wand, there are a few things I would do in South Africa or in any country to make these things happen. One, I would invest a lot into research, and then I will also invest a lot into education. I would make sure that every child that goes to school, while schooling is free, but they are only not taught academic content. They are taught both academic and proper life orientation skills, not as we do it now. They are taught about how to lead themselves. They are taught who they are. They are taught where they come from. They are taught where their villages are and how history of this country has emerged to what it is today. And then they are also taught forgiveness, because this country is still full of anger. And I'm part of this country. We are an angry country, and that is why we are greedy sometimes, and we don't want to work together. We haven't forgiven each other since democracy came in 1994, in my view. We're still holding the past grudges. I would put education and have a stream that is compulsory for every child from grade 1 up to master's or doctorate level. I would make sure that you don't, Dr. Mkono, if he is here, or Dr. Magadlela, I would say you don't get a qualification of your degree if you have not collected points of how you have done on the life orientation streams, and which courses have you done, and which community do you work with, and where do you volunteer your service, and how many other people are you supporting to lift them up, and where are you investing in your additional resources you have to either lift an individual or lift a community. We need to start here. And secondly, we must still receive aids. I agree, I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I would put a time frame. Until when are we going to continue to receive aid? And that will be supported by how we are turning around our economies locally and put proper achievable goals of how that should be done, and make sure that in the next 10 or 20 years, our aid reduces and we have more resources building from internally. I will make sure also that we build billionaires. I hope I was. I would make sure that every billionaire or trillionaire commits to a national fund that supports the poor and the vulnerable and educate people, and consolidate all these resources into one and put able principled people to lead those funds and make them made available to the poor of the poorest, and also grow the small businesses. Unfortunately, the late Maponya was not used to that effect. He would have been the chairman of those funds. So those are practical things, Zabalaz, that I believe we need to do. It's not easy, but we must do them.
Thank you. I'm Simengai Waza Zulu. I do work with Babu Mthembu closer from time to time. Thank you for the presentation. It is tiring well with what one is noticing in terms of personal journey for growth, as well as things that are happening currently in South Africa and in the world. My comment basically it's about our political system. I feel in all your contribution and the questions that have been asked, I feel that there's quite a lot that we need to focus on in changing our electoral system, because when we speak of prioritizing education and all the ideas that we're putting forward, I think where we lack, it's because most of the things are led by politicians, and the manner in which we elect them, the element of accountability, it leaves us a lot to be desired. It's not working, to put it bluntly. It's not working for our benefit. And even if you look at the unification of African nations, that's where we should be at, uniting Africa, because it's a billion-dollar market. But our politicians, they don't seem to be really working serious on that direction. For them, it's good to have AU, to have these yearly sessions, but there's nothing tangible that speaks to improving our livelihood in Africa and to do away with these donor funds. So those were two comments, and basically I would say, and how best we work around individually, how best we work around in influencing this kind of change.
I will unmute Milton and then allow a comment. Milton, over to you.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you, Delani. Very insightful presentation. I'll talk about electoral leadership. I think for me that's an angle I'm very interested in. I realize that the performance of our different economies, whether you look at it at the micro or macro level, municipality, word or country, to a large extent depends on um, um, the models we use to be able to get whoever becomes our leaders. And in situations where we elect the wrong people, there's always a risk that the policy frameworks are wrong, the institutional setups are wrong. Private business then finds it very difficult, to apply what you call best practice. So from a leadership perspective, what models would work for Africa when it comes to choosing visionary leaders, leaders who can take us to the next level? Just something I'm passionate about. Thank you.
Quite a good question there. Delano, we've got two. Would you like to respond to this?
Yeah, let me try. I think, Gwaza, I'm happy you are here. Makeba, I think your question about a change of electoral system also links to what Milton was talking about. We have had a commission or a report available by Van Zyl-Slabb, correct, which had proposed a need for changing electoral system after we had a government of national unity. Why that report has not been implemented? That's the first question. We have a proposal, it has not been implemented. We do need a new electoral system. I'm not trying to give an answer to Milton, but I want to say we need our researchers, and I'm happy Philani is here, I saw his name, from IDG. We need researchers who are truthful about Africa, but also who understand the geopolitics of the world and places like China, Germany, and places like Russia, who will honestly have eyes that are objective to come up with an electoral system that is a combination of constituency-based process. We do need constituency-based process, but we also need a blend that allows us to give the best skills to be part of government. Because sometimes if you just end up with electoral, base constituency system, you may get the raw deal. So you need both. Local people must make a choice, but also we must have a system that sifts and get the best brains into government. And I don't want to say I know much, but I want to say I've read a lot about China. As much as we talk sometimes difficult or wrongly about them, or sometimes uninformed, but all I know in China, you can't go to parliament if you don't have a degree. You can't also go to parliament if you don't have a tangible skill. And Philani may share with us if he's prepared to do that. So we need both. So Milton, we need a new electoral system. We need a blend that is locally based, but that is skills based, and that's also principle based. At the end of it, it's about the interest of your country. It's about the interest of Africa. It has nothing to do about the other interest of other countries. And I think Africa needs to learn about that. Thank you.
We understand that there are two forms of education systems that are happening, which is the private school and the public school systems. And yes, we are probably sitting here, most of us, and maybe the exception of people who lived in the apartheid era, maybe they had Bantu education, but most of us probably are products of the government system. But now we are living in a generation whereby there's been a lot of what some may call a mediocre level of interest of government into the public sector. it is as if the sector is about pushing numbers to say so many matriculants come out instead of so many smart or amazing people are being developed in this particular education system. So my question is, how do we assist as maybe leaders in our particular areas of work, or as parents, or as humans in this African continent of ours? Because at the end of the day, it's quite clear that not everything we must wait, and we are trying to avoid a time which I think you mentioned a bit, where it's just going to end up being about, I must make sure that my mother, my father, my child, my sister, and my brother are fine. Anyone else and everyone else will sort themselves out.
Okay, this was the one question. Velasa, may I just add, just to make the two questions, probably you can respond to, then we close thereafter. My comments, probably to seek your response, is in terms of the government side of things. I know you've articulated a plan of which, should you be in a position of influence or of power, you can be able to articulate that plan as part of what needs to be done. The question really is, knowing how government operates, it won't be as simple as you standing up and just saying what you need to say and sit down, and the rest need to follow exactly your vision or your plan. How do you deal with the issues of sabotage? How do we deal with different ideologies? How do we deal with different level of conflict and other hidden agendas that tend to come out in cabinet, parliament, and other spheres of governance, where it might end up derailing such a good vision or a good plan? Because the truth of the matter is, not all the leaders whom we've seen failing are bad leaders, as it were. It's probably because of circumstances, environments, and other things that they deal with. That's the one part. The second part is, whilst government is a complicated, probably environment, let's talk about the private sector or probably organizations where there might not be so much complication. Why do you still find very few organizations in Africa taking charge of the change in leadership and influence in terms of the global sphere? Every time we still talk of Facebook, we still talk of Google, Alphabet, we still talk of some of the companies in China emerging. There are still very few companies emerging from Africa which are taking the world by storm in terms of introducing new products, services, solutions, and obviously sustaining to become global world beaters, notwithstanding the fact that Africa is on its own is a growing market. So how are we not getting some of those organizations or entities emerging and making a mark in the global sphere? Thank you.
Is that the last question?
Yes.
Let me start with your comment. Firstly, I think we have a challenge as Africans, and I'm including myself. We don't love each other. We haven't found a way of how to work together as Africans. That's the first thing, which then makes it possible that whatever good we have done, nobody celebrates it, nobody packages it in a manner that becomes global, and that becomes the model of the world, even in academic sphere. Secondly, we haven't been able to lead our academic institutions and drive them through research that becomes globally acknowledged and also used properly. We don't have a lack of innovation. We have a lot of things that have been done in Africa, but we haven't been able to learn how to compete and punch above our weight in the global sphere without fear and without compromise. The other thing about this is that I don't believe that ideology is a problem. I also don't believe that things like either you become a union or a communist is a problem. I remember very well in the early 90s, I was part of a team that nobody remembers now, where we were bringing together the warriors of the ANC and the IFP for the first time, and I was working for the Council of Churches. We did that because we allowed them to get into honest and what people call courageous conversation, where you don't put no cows are left untouched. You allow people to talk openly, challenge each other openly, and you have a mediator, which is what we were doing at that time, of challenging them to a point where they say, my brother, I'm prepared to lay down my arms and I'm prepared to shake your hand. At the end of the day, as you will see my slides when you get them, every human being has a good intention at heart, to be good, to be generous, to be remembered when they have died. We haven't had a dialogue as South Africa that allows us to box each other, challenge each other, and look for solutions that are of the best for all of us. We haven't. And I believe that in organizations, in companies, whether private sector or public, there are good intentions and good people, but they don't get time to be challenged with ideas that make them agree to a common solution. When it comes to education, which is what Zabalaza was talking about, I have my heart pains when it comes to that, and Gwaza knows, Mkazi knows. I've worked with so many schools in this country, in Gauteng, in Free State, in KZN. The bottom line is, no one wants change. People want the old things to continue as they are. And that therefore allows private education to thrive, because public education smells. You can't stop people with resources to go private. But if we improve private education, we improve quality of teaching, which at the moment for me is not getting attention. We improve quality of leading schools, which again for me is not getting attention. We improve the quality of parenting. When I was a principal some years ago, I started a program to teach parents how to monitor homework. And I had no funder, I had no electricity, but I did it. Parents must be paid attention to and be supported and be helped to manage homeworks and schooling at home. It's painful to throw children to a dysfunctional circle of homes and community and expect them to compete equal to the private sector. Until we sort the public sector, we invest properly, we put skills, we empower people there, we improve leadership, we improve teaching and methodologies, we will never change this issue of public and private schooling, as far as I'm concerned, my brother Zabalaza.
Thank you very much. I think we've come to the end of our wonderful engagement session. Thank you for everyone who participated and who joined us. This was just the first of many to come. I can safely announce that we have a second one coming on Friday, same time, 2 o'clock, where we're talking about reforming organizational teams for high performance and excellence. We'll be circulating the information accordingly, so please do join us if you are available, or if you're still locked down. Hopefully it's for the good intention, this lockdown, so whereby we can get to talk and engage amongst various levels of societal and class groups, if I were to put it that way. So thank you very much. And then I also like to thank Velase, Mr. Mthembu, for your insight, wisdom. I know you were just only warming up, only to find that the time is coming to an end. So definitely the platform we're gonna have on Friday, we're gonna allow us to engage further, because this dimension of leadership, as it might appear, it's very multifaceted. We can talk about many aspects which are cornerstones or influencing leadership, its efficiency and success as well. So join us on Friday, everyone who can, so that Delani will still share with us the element of reforming teams for efficiency as well as high performance, be it in current times or in future engagements. And I believe that will be a continuation of the leadership element in the sphere of government as well as organizations alike. Thank you very much. The link will be made available for the video